Hey everybody, it's Mike from Drive80.com and welcome to Making After Effects Non-Scary, where my goal in life is to have people open up a program like it looks as complicated as After Effects and go, oh, that's it. And today we're going to go over the interface that is going to help you start in that path. This will probably be one of the longer videos out of all of the videos that I have, but it's essential to understand this interface so you're not confused and it becomes pretty, that's the word. You just become comfortable with it. That's basically it. So we're gonna start. We're gonna go panel by panel, and I'm gonna kind of go in this direction here. Talk a little bit about up here. We're gonna open up, talk about these tools, and kind of briefly brush over some things that are gonna pop up here, and not overwhelm you. So what we're doing right now is these are panels, and the panels are just they're different elements where you're going to be able to do stuff. And here you're going to keep your elements that you're going to animate. This is a timeline, this is your comp, and things like this. So here in this panel, you can always move these around to make it work for you. And what you can do is if you just select this and drag it, you'll see that these little purple highlights come up and you can change this and go wherever you want to. So at this point, I'm like, I want this to be the right, or I want this to be in the middle, or I want this to be, let's see, I want this to be up here, go across this whole thing. So you can just, whatever works for you and whatever your monitor system is like, just make this work. If I had another monitor to the right, I would drag this, I would actually at first, let me do this first. I would undock it, let me put this in the middle. I would undock my panel and I would drag it out over here to my other screen. So you can do that as well, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to drag this back on to here, and that's where I'm going to keep my project. And that's where I always keep it over here. And you do the same thing with all of these projects in general. I'm going to sneeze real quick. Sorry about that. Probably should have edited that out, but I didn't. So okay, so those are the panels. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a comp. We're going to talk about what these are right here. So the project panel is where you're going to keep all of your assets. Now, when you bring in video and other elements like EPS files, JPEGs, PNGs, or PNGs, or GIFs, or GIFs, whatever you call them, it's all going to live in here, and it can get very jumbled. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to work with folders. Now, interpret footage, I typically just don't even touch that because I don't work with a lot of footage. I create a lot of animations, so we're not going to go over that. But we're going to go over create a new folder. So you can either click this, it'll create a new folder, or if you hit Shift Option Command, and it'll create a folder. And now I always do an assets folder is where I keep everything. Now that folder is highlighted. I'm going to do Shift Option Command again, and I'll do JPEG, and then I'll hit the arrow up key, Shift Option N, and I will do, let's see, AI for Illustrator. Go up again and do PSD, and then Shift Option N, and Shift Option N, Shift Option Command N. Sorry about that. I'm totally. Everyone's like, "What happens? You're yelling. You're doing this wrong." I do MOV files. I could also, since I misspelled PSD file, I can just hover over it. So I'm using the up and down arrows on my keyboard, and I'm hitting Return, and then I'm hitting a D, and there you go, PSD. So that's how I keep all of my files organized. You can also add a comp folder or comps. You can do inside of there. You can do main. You can do other things. You can do audio. If I did audio, I would do sound effects. I go up and I would do music. I would also do voiceover. So I'd have all of this here. Now, we're not going to import any files into today's lesson, but that's where I would keep all of that groovy stuff. All right, so now we're going to go to making a comp. Now, composition is where the movie is going to exist, where all of your footage exists. Now, once I make this, you'll see that it'll unlock all the elements down here. So you can do the lame way and click this to get a comp settings window, or you can do it the professional, fun, fast way and do Command N. Since I'm working on a Mac and speaking in Mac terms, so you can use Control instead of Command if you're on a PC, so just substitute that there. And in here, you've got your settings for doing a composition. I typically will just leave this as is. I will then, depending if I'm bringing in an MOV file or footage, if that's the case, then I would take that MOV file and just drag it on here, because then the composition will take up all the characteristics and attributes of that MOV file. But since we're starting from scratch, we're just going to just go in this direction. So with 1920 by 1080, that's usually what a widescreen video will look like. If you have a widescreen TV or a computer monitor, that's what's fitting into the screen. It's 1920 across and 1080 up and down. That's what that is. Square pixels, I just keep it on this. I don't touch that. Frame rate, depends. The frame rate is just how many frames in a second. So if you want it to be more smooth, you add way more frames because then that will fill an entire second with more information. But typically videos are around 24 to 29 or 30. I'm sorry, or 23.976 or 24. Those are similar. But if you bring a movie in and if it was filmed at 24 frames per second, and then you're animating on top of that at 30 frames per second, it's going to look a little funky, or vice versa, it's going to look way funky. So you always want to match your frames per second, and that's something you want to do at the very beginning. So I'm just going to keep it at 24. Start time code is, I never touch this, keep it at 0, unless I was making a new comp for some reason. It was going to start in a different area, but keep it at 0. Duration, even if this was a 15-second long clip, I'd always give myself some breathing room afterwards, because I just like to have some space, and then when I render this out at the end, that is when I will make the video trim to the actual length of it, which I don't think we'll really get into. We'll kind of get into in this. Then background color, make this whatever you want to. I'm just keeping this a nice blue, and hit OK. And now what this is our composition. So we're inside of this little box here. And to make anything happen in this little box, you need to use this timeline. Now, there's nothing on here right now, but we're going to get to that. So again, and that's it. And if I want to get rid of this, I can just hit delete, or I can undo that, Command Z, or I can also drag it onto here, the trash can. I can undo that, or I can just click the trash can if it's selected, and it'll delete. But I don't want to do that. I want to keep that around. And that's this for the project window. Effects control window is that we are going to add some effects. We don't need to get into that yet. Just like basic stuff. So again, we're going to open up the composition by double clicking it. And here we are inside of the comp. And there's all these cool little things down here. We don't need to go over all of them. This is if you want to kind of zoom in and zoom out at certain percentages. So at 100%, I'm sure it's at 100%, but if I zoom out by doing command minus sign, it's too much. Like, I like to see this gray area with what I'm working with, and there's this blue area in here. So I'll keep it probably around 25% to maybe 33.3, depending on what I'm doing. Or I'm going to hit command minus to go backwards. I usually don't mess around with any of these things. I don't really like working with a grid. Rulers, I'll sometimes use rulers. If you hit Command R, you can get rulers. So that's the case. You can bring them in if you want to have certain points on things that you need to, wherever you need to use these. If not, I'm just going to delete these by dragging them up and off of the composition, and now they're gone. Here we go, go-to time. We don't need to go into that. We don't really need to take a snapshot and all this other crap. This is a big one right here, the resolution. This is when you're looking at this, how clear the resolution of this is. So if I had an image in here, then if I looked at a quarter, if I'm moving things around and I have like 100 things in a layer, on these layers, and I'm moving things around, depending on how fast my computer is, it might just be very chuggy and not work, because it's like basically has to process every movement you make. So I keep it on a quarter just so it's not so blurry. So I ended up I just paused the edit I was doing and grabbed an image. So I'm going to just drag this on here so I can show you exactly what I'm talking about. So if I zoom in, this is one of the best movies from the 80s. So if anyone knows who this is, mad props to you. But you can see that the best way sometimes to show people stuff is visually. So since we're on quarter here, that means that it looks very crappy. And we hit third, it starts to kind of smooth out a little bit, half smooths out a little bit, and then full, even though we're zoomed in 100%, it's still, it's a little blurry, but, go back, the quality is going to get a lot better. And you can see if it's going to degrade more the more I go down. But that's just so when I render this video out, make the final copy, it's not going to look like that though, depending on the settings that I tell it. If I tell it to render a high-res video, it's going to look like this. So don't worry if you're working all the time and it looks crappy. It's just going to save you speed and time and things like that, right? So like right now, I want to move this thing around, and it's got a little bit of chug to it. If I do full, then it's got to See, it's even taking a little bit of time right now because I'm recording my screen and my RAM's getting used up on my computer. So, but yeah, so we're going to do quarter. Hopefully that visualizes what I was talking about. This is a cool little tool, region of interest. Let's say, actually, you know what? Let's bring this down. Let's say that I have, I'm getting a little advanced here, but it'll be like text. I got text on here. And you see as I'm doing this, this is going to fill down here. We'll get to that in a second. But I want to make this into a comp, and I'm like, okay, well, I want these things to be their own sub-comp, pre-comp, I'm sorry. And so I'm going to select the two of them. Actually, no, I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to have these texts. Okay, so the text is going to be, these are going to be pre-comps. I'm going to make a pre-composition where I'm going to do, actually I'm just going to do Shift-Command-C, and that's going to make my pre-comp, and text pre-comp. Obviously, get really detailed with your naming conventions. You'll see that the pre-comp is over here. That means that there's just a video in a video. The problem is that I just want to be able to move these boxes, these text things around, and I don't want it to be hiding because I got to move this and I got to like, you know, select it here. It's going to be a big pain in the ass. So actually I went too far. All right, so what this does is if I double click, it'll bring me into this pre-comp where this now is like a layer down from where the comp is, and hopefully it's not confusing you. But this here, if I just want the composition to be these things, I would draw over that, and I would do crop comp to region of interest, and then I'd go back up again to here. And the problem is it's going to move it over, so you know I can move it back here. But now it's the size of this pre-comp, which it will make sense after you get really into this. I gotta like move all these things around. Another thing too, if you ever double click on something, it's going to bring you into it, and that's where you can use all of these things like the brush tool and crap like that, and you can draw on it and all these things, and you can erase stuff and clone things, which I guess is interesting. I don't ever use these things, but if usually when I'm in here, I'm like, crap, how do I get back up? I just go and just double click on the main comp I was in. So all that stuff I just did, it's like living inside of this, and I don't know why that's beneficial, but for me it's not. But yeah, so hopefully that makes sense so far. I'm going to delete you. I'm going to delete you. I'm also going to get rid of these panels because I don't need them. And we're going to keep moving along here. So we're going to go here. Info. Info is going to show you the X and Y. Watch my cursor. Now look back up at that box. It's going to show you where these points are. So if I'm in the top left corner, typically of any program, the 0, 0 axis or X and Y is the top left, and then it moves down in the opposite direction. So I rarely use this, and I'm going to delete that. Audio, I rarely use that as well. Now we're going to talk about these guys here. Now I have a pre-made workspace, which I'm going to do right now. There we go, September 2017. It's going to open this up for me. Okay, good. I did that because I always have my character and paragraph panels here, and I didn't want to. I wanted to show you that you can save a workspace as well. You can have one, you can have one that you design, and then you can save it as a new workspace, and you can name it whatever you want to. I don't want to do that since I already have mine, and that's it. And in that other case, if I didn't want to open my workspace, I could have said, all right, well, if character and paragraph are closed, well, crap, where are they right now? Okay, well, let me go up here to window and see where they are. All right, there's character, boom, and window, paragraph, boom, there's that. Okay, and so we're going to go over this. Character panel, I go over this in my text video, but it's really just if you have type on the comp, then all of these things, you can change the font, you can increase it, you can do all these weird things. So I'm not going to go too much into it because I go over it in another video. If you have paragraph, you have this multiple times, and let's say, oops, it's over here. It's not really going to show too well. There we go. All right, so if I had a paragraph, I can left align it, I can center align it, I can right, justify it right, and that's it. All these other things too, you can mess around with all of this stuff here. I just usually don't. I just kind of keep it simple and don't ever really need to touch any of this crap. But that's that panel there. Preview. This is a little bit more complex. And the way After Effects works is that you've got your resolution and you've got your RAM preview resolution. This is going to be used when you are animating something. So let's say that what we'll do here is kind of show you what I mean. I've got this on here, and if we zoom in, we could see that it's fuzzy. However, when I RAM preview it, and a RAM preview is going to basically just say whatever is in this work area space, I want to play it. And whatever you did, you might have this thing sitting here in the beginning, and then at this part it goes across the screen to here for some random reason. But it's going to now show this to me, and what it's going to do is a RAM preview is going to say, all right, well, your frame rate, okay, your frame rate's 24. That makes sure that matches what this is here. And the way I got that was Command N, and we've got a frame rate here, which we showed you in the beginning. Now, that will say so if this was 60 and this was 24, the numbers aren't going to match, and it's going to look like crap. It's also going to lie to you in showing you how the speed works. So if you work 70 hours on an animation and you're like, oh my god, this was on 60 the whole time and this thing was at 24, you're going to want to blow your brains out because all the movement you were doing is going to be off. So this stuff I just typically don't use. The main things I worry about in here is this, my resolution, and that's it, and my frame rate. Those are the only two things. So if that's the case, that means that, all right, I want to say full. So now if I animate this, you'll see that if we move forward, it's fuzzy. But if I RAM preview it, see how it became clear as day, how the image became a lot clearer? That's what that is. So it's giving you a preview of what your video is going to do as you're editing. And it's going to make way more sense once you're in it. I mean, once you're in it for even half a day, an hour, like a full day, whatever it's going to be, you're going to understand this very fast. I usually just keep this at a quarter and this a quarter because my computer, I've had it for a while and I don't have, my RAM isn't great on it. So this helps me in that sense. If I had this amazing computer with a ton of RAM, then this would be no problem at all, and I'd probably keep this at full and this at full. But you look at movies like Lord of the Rings and things like that, the machines that these people have are unbelievable, and they're even they might keep it on quarter because they have so much video footage happening. So hopefully that makes sense. All this other stuff is just like some things that I've downloaded through the years. You've got effects. Well, I mean, Script Launcher, that's a whole different conversation. But effects, this comes with it, and these are all these cool things. So let's say that I use, again, my Real Genius, my Real Genius reference, and I want to blur it. I could box blur it. I could double click and it adds a blur, and I can make it blurry. Now, where the cool thing is with that is if I mess around with its time, which again I'll get into this a little bit more later, but if my keyframe is here and at this point I wanted to now go to unblur, and if I RAM preview it, you'll see that it's now unblurring. There we go. So that's pretty fun. And if I extend this out, it's going to keep looping based on where the work area is here. There it is. And it's also going to look very, the resolution is going to be crappy because that was on quarter. But if it's on full, it's going to take a little longer. See, it's going to take some time to preview that. But see, it's a lot clearer, and that's what it would look like. So you can see where these effects, maybe your brain starts going, oh, wow, I can see all these different things I can do. That's one of them right there. I mean, out of the billions of things you can do with this program. So that was effects. There's just so many effects. I rarely touch them. And depending on what I'm looking to do, then I'll research some effects and say, how can I utilize this to make this look cooler? And that's how I learn along the way. Align tool, really cool. If I get myself, let's see this rectangle. I draw this here. If I have this on stage, I can now align it to anywhere on the comp that I want to. And that's pretty neat. If I had two of these, if I hit Command D, I can now, actually I'll do three because three will make more sense. If I have three on here, if I want equal spacing in the middle, I can just do to selection, which means these guys, and then go, all right, here you go. Now I have equal spacing here. And I want them to be dead center, or I want them to be vertically centered. If I also want them all to be left aligned, maybe I want this one to be up here, here, and here, but I'm like, okay, well, I want all of you to be aligned left. There you go. But it's not doing it to the comp unless I do the comp. I do that there we go. and then I go to space it. You're not going to see the spacing, but it's there. So that's the align tool. Super cool. GIF gun, that was a download that I did. I highly recommend it if you do a lot of GIFs. I say GIFs. People say GIF. I just think it's GIF, even though I saw a video where the creator called it a GIF. And to almost close out on this video, we've got our timeline here now. We get the tools up here, which I go in depth in all of these except for pretty much these right here or the camera tool. But I go into all of these ad nauseum in other videos, so make sure you check those out. But this is where all the tools exist. So in this case, I just want to get this square and make it a square. Oops, square, Q, square. Here we go. And then if I have this here, I apologize if I'm saying a lot. It's a bad habit, and we all do it. But in here, there is where we're using keyframes and saying at this point in time do something, at this point in time do something. So you can basically take this and say, all right, at the beginning, I want to mess with the transformation of all these things. I could do an anchor point, which I can move around. I could do a position where I'm moving it, all based on this anchor point here, mind you. I could scale it up and down based on where that anchor point is. I can rotate it based on that anchor point, and I can make my opacity just go up and down. That doesn't have any, the anchor point has nothing to do with the opacity. So yeah, so those are all the coordinates that make those things happen. The rectangle itself, if I'm messing with that, there's all these different things. I can mess with the size there. I can move the position around in here. I can even make it round, which is really freaking cool. So I can have a square that at this point, if I give it a little keyframe here, and the keyframe says at this point in time, all these coordinates, or just this coordinate is this. If I move it out to here, I will unround it. And now if I preview it, you'll see that it's going to animate to be from a rounded square to a square. And if I wanted to zoom, make it a little faster, I can just bring the time in of that keyframe, which again, I'll go more over in other videos. But this kind of just gives you an idea of all this stuff here. And this isn't always going to be the same for everything. A lot of these attributes are going to be different. You can mess with like the fill color. So the fill color here is, let's say, white, or it's red. And then we make a keyframe where the end is white. It's going to fill in, and it's going to just do some math and say, all right, this is what we're going to draw in this time. So it's going to go here, and it's going to go from white to red. So that's like the real basics of this program. If you have any questions, so that's it. I don't want to go too nuts in, even though this has probably spent a good amount of time in here, but that's the interface and what you'll start with. Hopefully it's a little less scary for you. And I know I've been working with After Effects for many years, and there's still things I'm learning, and I've scratched the surface on it, and there's so much more things. But I've only utilized this program. No, I've utilized this program the whole time, but there's only certain tools or whatever I've been using the whole time, and I've built a business off of this since 2010. So, there's projects that we do that are anywhere from maybe $4,000 up to $40,000. But these basic things outside of what I've shown you is all you needed to know, is knowing a couple of these tools, knowing some cool tricks, learning some other stuff, and that's it. As long as you can tell a story with your movement, then you're going to be successful. And also, you should know how to sell, which is something I'm not going to teach you. But if you have any questions, just reach out, mike@drive80.com. This is going to drive me nuts. Reach out to mike@drive80.com and let me know. You can also comment anywhere this video exists. Tag some friends. Say, hey, this would be interesting for what you do. Or you can even you can hire me directly. I do personal training as well for an hourly rate. And if not, if you don't want to animate anything and you think this is too complex, then check out drive80.com. You can see the explainer animations that we do, and we can do it for you as long as you don't mind us taking over and making it awesome. All right. Thank you very much.